First, if you want to venture out of this video, please like, subscribe, comment, share. Today, I'm going to tell you about a gaming console I bet you don't know that even existed, except for the 15 Soviet republics. This is a gaming console called Dendi that was introduced in the 1990s by a company called Steepler. This is like a Photoshop version or a con version of Nintendo Famicom, which came out in the 90s as well. So Steepler made a Taiwanese clone of the Nintendo Famicom to introduce it to the Soviet market, because you have to remember, in the 90s, the Soviet Union was crumbling. Oligarchs were taking over government bodies, government companies, steel, oil, and so on and so forth. This guy came out with a clone called Dendi. Dendi was a introductory gaming console like Nintendo. And it was brought to the Soviet people because during those times, the Soviet Union didn't have much. Especially during those times, they didn't import a lot of items from the West, from Europe, from the United States. The only people they can really import stuff from was China, Southeast Asia, Taiwan being one of them. So I usually talk about companies that evolve, they grow, they make gazillion dollars. Well, this is actually a little bit on the contrary. This is a company that evolved, grew, but then fell. In the early 1990s, the Russian market lacked affordable gaming consoles. So Dendi or Steepler, they recognized this gap that the Russian market didn't have any gaming consoles, and other gaming consoles like Sony and Sega, they were very expensive. Steepler employed very aggressive and innovative marketing techniques. It brought the catchy phrase animated by the elephant, Dendi Dendi. Initially, Dendi was priced at 39,000 rubles, which is equivalent to about $94, which was way more affordable than Sega and Sony. So Dendi was very different from Sega or PlayStation. At the time, Dendi was using an 8-bit system, while Sony and Sega started to using 16 and then 32. You have to remember that also Dendi was a knockoff version. That means they didn't have the licensing right, and a lot of people didn't want to partner up with them because they were a clone. And that gave the vibe to a lot of partners not to work with them, not to partner up with them. Me being a product of the Soviet Union, I grew up with Dendi, okay? We didn't know what Sony PlayStation was. We didn't know what Sega was. And Dendi was the best thing that we could have. It used to be with those cassette players like Nintendo you would put on top. You would have to blow up the cartridge because it didn't work, or it was, funny on the TV. So that's all we had. But then my neighbor got a Sega. And the first time I played Sega, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? This is out of this world. It's not comparable. And the first game I played was Mortal Kombat. And then I played Sonic. And that gave me the vibe that, Dendi might not be the best thing, Sega might be, or PlayStation as well. However, me thinking of all of that, I didn't know that Dendi at the time sold over 1 million units in 1993. They made over 500 million rubles, or $100 million. And if you go back to the mid-90s, $100 million, it's like, I don't know, $300-400 million today if you equate it to today, to today's inflation rate. That was a lot of money for a Russian company at the time. Because, Dendi wasn't officially licensed, they had no access to new game development pipelines. They couldn't evolve to the next generation of gaming consoles. They were completely dependent on reverse engineering. They were trying to pirate every single game console that was coming out. They tried to pirate every single game that was coming out. But we also have to remember the fact that the quality wasn't there. The graphics wasn't there. And at the time, Soviet Republic was lacking a lot of engineers. What am I telling you right now? That this company who made a lot of money in the 1990s in Soviet Russia forgot their roots. They forgot innovation. They forgot where they started from, but most importantly, they were relying on somebody else instead of themselves. So when you start a business, you don't want to copycat somebody else. When you start a business, you want to be original. You want to do something that hasn't been done before. And even if it has, I want you to do it in an improved way, in a better way. And if Dendi is improvising, let it be original. Don't copy the system of Nintendo Famicom. Don't copy Sega. Don't copy PlayStation. Don't reverse engineer. Make something unique. Bring something to the table that is different. And even if you're unable to do so, and even if you are reverse engineering, because a lot of businesses do reverse engineer, and that's totally fine, but you have to keep up with the demand. You have to keep up with the innovation. You have to keep up with the new way these consoles or the business you're in is evolving. You have to pivot to the new market. If they're doing something great, you got to do it better. If they're doing something else, You got to innovate and produce or bring something new to the table that they haven't. Dendi didn't just lose because they had terrible graphics. Dendi lost because they didn't evolve as a company. They stayed where they originated. They didn't go to the next level, as I always talk about. They didn't progress to the next stage. They just stayed, being old Dendi with an elephant as a mascot. So what's the lesson we learned today from Dendi? When you start a company, in the beginning it's great. But when you get comfortable, like Dendi and Steepler, you get bought out or you get crushed by companies like Sony and Sega. As I say every single time, you got to pivot, you got to innovate, you got to look ahead, you got to see what's coming before your competitors do, or at least at the same time, so you can compete with them. If you want to venture out of this video, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Do you remember Dendi? I want to hear your comments.